Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please be seated. When Reverend Squire called me on a hot summer day not long ago and asked if I would speak here this morning, I didn't hesitate. Tomorrow is awfully important to me, just as the Kennedy assassination was important for my parents, and as Pearl Harbor Day was important for my grandparents. I have often said that beyond the personal events in my life, like family marriages and births and deaths, September 11 is the most significant day in my 48 years. It was that big. Things changed forever when 19 truly evil individuals took control of 4 airplanes and deliberately crashed them, killing 3,000 innocent Americans. But once I agreed to be here, I began to get nervous. How could I possibly say something meaningful in the span of 10 to 15 minutes? And so I turned to my radio audience and I sought assistance. I asked listeners to suggest what they thought I should say to all of you this morning, and within 24 hours, more than 500 of them, in a very conscientious and deliberate way, did so. There were some common themes that emerged. Many said that I should remind you of the sacrifice of September 11. Remind them, they said, of firefighters who ran into burning buildings and didn't come out. Remind them, they said, of soldiers who went to battlefields far away and never returned. Others suggested I speak about patriotism. And more than a few thought that I should remind all of us that there remains evil in this world. Some of the emails were unique. A fellow named Steve Bergen of Terrell, Texas, sent me this email. He said, I would focus on the ordinary people in several countries and how they've been affected by the events of that day. My son Daniel was just 15, and for some reason, on September 11, he stayed home from school. I went into his room and I woke him up each time something new happened, and he was not the least bit interested. Fast forward to 2005, now he was in the army in Iraq. He did 2 years, came home, was recalled to Afghanistan. A few weeks ago, on July 31 at 10:30 at night, I was awakened with a telephone call from the Army asking if I had spoken to my son in the last few days. I said, no, have you? And then I was told that my son had been seriously wounded in Afghanistan and would be on his way to Germany soon. A few weeks ago, the same son who, when he was 15, wasn't all that interested in September 11, was now in a hospital bed and telling his father, Dad, you were right when you said that day changed the lives of everyone in the entire world. This father said to me that I should say to you, the world can change forever, any day. And that theme of the world changing in a moment's notice was one that I liked. It was one that I heard from another man in New Jersey. His name is Ike Noble. He lives in Haddonfield. And he wrote to me and he said, Michael, I heard you on the radio wondering aloud, how can I make every second count at Episcopal Academy when I speak? And he said, that's your theme. You need to explain to them that every second does count, and then detail how that lesson applies to their lives. Well, I've been thinking about how every second counted on September 11. September 11, when 2 airplanes hit the World Trade Center, when a 3rd airplane crashed into the Pentagon, and when a 4th airplane, Flight 93, crashed in western Pennsylvania. United 93, with a scheduled departure from Newark, New Jersey, supposed to arrive later that day in San Francisco. There are 5 examples that come to my mind about how every second counted with regard to Flight 93. As a matter of fact, 1 month in advance of Flight 93, every moment counted. You see, on August 4, a month in advance of September 11 or thereabouts, at the Orlando International Airport, there was a man working in border protection named Jose Melendez Perez. And when a gentleman got off of a flight from England, a Saudi national, and Melendez-Perez interacted with him, he didn't like what he saw. He later told the 9/11 Commission, "Something about him just gave me the creeps." And so Mr. Melendez-Perez, in a split-second decision, decided to deny this man entry to the United States. That man was Mohammed al-Qahtani. He was supposed to be the fifth hijacker on Flight 93. Flight 93 had 4 terrorists aboard, while the other airplanes all had 5. And so by virtue of his split-second decision, Mr. Melendez-Perez, in making the hijackers shorthanded on Flight 93, arguably spared a strike on the nation's capital on September 11. Seconds also mattered. When United 93 passenger Mark Bingham woke up on September 11 because he'd overslept. And so a friend had to frantically drive him from Manhattan to the airport in Newark. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. Mark Bingham pulled up at the terminal, Terminal A, at 7:40. He was carrying the same blue and gold canvas bag that he'd used as a standout rugby player at the University of California at Berkeley. The flight attendants had to reopen the door at the end of the ramp to Flight 93 just to let him on board. And amazingly, 9 minutes after his buddy dropped him off, he was sipping orange juice in first class. But a few more seconds, he'd have missed that flight. Seconds also counted when it came to the departure of Flight 93. See, the hijackers' plan was to pick flights that were all leaving within a short time period of one another. And 3 of those 4 flights that day were relatively on time. Not Flight 93, the flight that Mark Bingham had run to catch at the end. It left the ground 25 minutes late, and just 4 minutes before American Airlines Flight 11 hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center. In other words, had Flight 93 been delayed even longer, a few more seconds, it might never have left the ground, because then news of the attack was known to everyone, and all airplanes were grounded that day. Seconds also mattered once Flight 93 was airborne. At 9:24 a.m., the pilots of Flight 93 received a radio transmission. It was a warning from the ground, and it said, "Beware of cockpit intrusion." They weren't sure what it meant, and they only had seconds to figure out what to do about it.